On to our next news. U.S. President Donald Trump has said Attorney General Pam Bondi should release whatever she thinks is credible on sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, as he faces rare backlash from supporters after seeking to draw a line under the case. Bondi has been lambasted by some of Trump's political base after she said last week there was no evidence that Epstein kept a client list or was blackmailing powerful figures. At the weekend, Trump urged supporters not to waste time and energy on the controversy, but allies of the president, including House of Representatives Speaker Mike Johnson, are calling for transparency. Here's what the U.S. president had to say.
Interested in the Epstein story and so upset about how it's been handled. Why do you think that is?
Why they would be so interested? He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information has been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Follow witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information is fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going. I think, well, really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like Jack Gordon. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say, let them have it.
Now we're joined by Mark Sutherland for this discussion. He's a geopolitical commentator joining us live from London. Thank you, Mark, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, how important is transparency for political figures linked to such high-profile controversies?
The Epstein case, if we're referring to that, has been going on for a long time in regard to the political chatter. One of the biggest problem is that before Trump was elected, he then turns around and says, we'll release all the files, we'll get every information out there. And the reason why there has been such a reaction from his base is after Pam Bondi, it's inferring, and also him saying there's nothing to see here. Why is it going on? That chatter is not helpful, because as he said Russia, the Steele, etc. There's been so much that's gone on in regard to his first administration. Now in the second, it's when these promises have been made, like he said, I'll also release any files on the shooting of Kennedy in '63. So that is why it's causing this controversy. It's making a promise and then not fulfilling that in people's eyes.
And with calls for transparency coming from both Trump's allies and opponents, how should the Attorney General balance legal confidentiality and public demand for disclosure in cases involving powerful individuals?
But you've just said it. This whole thing of balancing the disclosure of powerful individuals. That's why people have had enough of this, because they just think that powerful individuals are then being protected. Because if you then see people like Bill Clinton in a blue dress on a painting, wearing, I believe the blue dress that they're referring to is one that Monica Lewinsky wore in regard to the whole scandal of inappropriate behavior that Clinton had with his intern at that time and abuse of that power. So this is why it goes back and back, and people feel that they are gaslighting. In regard to protecting certain individuals, that is why people have been getting very, very upset about it, because they've said, just lay it all out. People have got things to hide on both sides of the aisle, tough, because there is a phrase. The phrase is uniparty. People feel that both parties are actually unified against the people. That's why, having been through the whole Jan 6 situation, where people were then accused of, an insurrection and all of this kind of thing. That's a subject that would take about 2 hours, which I'm more than willing to talk about. But this is why, on that, with also previous covering up, people have really had enough and have grown extremely suspicious. They just want the whole thing out there. And if people on their side, say on the Republican side, are guilty of this, so be it. They need to be exposed. I suppose the other thing, just quickly on it, it's saying that it wouldn't have surprised, as Trump has alluded to, and others, that maybe the Democrats have spent the last 4 years, getting rid of certain files, doctoring certain things to then accuse their opponents. We really don't know. The number one thing is that people want around the world is they want the truth, and they want their governments to be truthful to them. That seems to be a rare commodity these days.
Yes, indeed. And now, what impact does President Trump's call for Attorney General Pam Bondi to release whatever she thinks is credible have on public trust in this Epstein investigation?
Time will tell, because one thing that they've got to bear in mind, they've got the midterm elections coming up, and people in midterms in regard to bang in the middle of his administration of 4 years. And the discussion has already been that they would lose, that there could be 40% of potential seats that they could lose, and because people are not convinced by this. He is trying to stand by his attorney general. That's why he said release everything. Sees maybe that this hasn't been helpful in regard to various other things that were said last weekend, and people like dear Lara Trump was out speaking about it, trying to be positive about it, as were others in regard to the administration. You then realize that the number one thing you've got to do is to just say, look, just release everything. The worry is that people are going to question that. They're going to turn around and say, well, Pam Bondi, are you actually going to release everything? There is this rumor, because you've got Kash Patel as head of the FBI, you've got Dan Bongino is number two. Dan Bongino has a big podcast. He spent for a number of years saying this has got to be released. Now, if he actually then resigned from the FBI, just give you an idea, then gets back into running his podcast, people are going to say, well, we don't believe you, Dan. You've been inside. What have you actually done? So now that's what people are saying about Pam Bondi. There was a discussion that suddenly on the independent news and chatter that Matt Gaetz was then suddenly called back to the White House. We don't know, but I do feel that there is going to be a strategy to say, well, look, we haven't handled this very well. We just need to release everything. But the problem is people are now in such doubt that they're going to go, well, we still don't believe you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mark, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we